Roden, you've got the floor.
Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to the Blue Horseshoe Club podcast, episode 2. We're moving on up here. I'm Roden, and joined today by our usual suspects here. We're going to start off with Caleb. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hey guys, I'm Caleb, and I am the CEO of Eve Guardian and the founder of the SEC Lounge, and now I am helping Roden run this show.
All right, Yin.
Yeah, I'm Jin'taan. I'm an FC within CVA, member of CSM 12, and occasionally I make videos that are somewhat popular.
All right, great. Sullen.
All right, Sullen Decimus, CSM 11 on my way out. I think this week upcoming is when I actually lose all my access. Then I finally hand the keys over. Bastion member, also wormholer on the side. So let's have some fun.
All right, great.
I must say your kids are adorable, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Rugrats in the background.
I know, right? All right, before we get crazy here, I got something cute for everyone's real quick entertainment. Alright, sorry, I had to cut it before they showed too much of that movie before we get copyrighted or something.
Yeah, you don't need to go through the whole thing, but yeah, it's pretty good.
That's what that literally courtesy of Caleb. I was like, holy shit, where'd you find that? Alright, and the reason we put that up is because one of the topics we have is actually got something to do with land rushes. Alright, we got these new free structures that are about to hit the scene.
Yeah, I might want to let Jin'taan actually introduce it, because he did the whole video of the whole speculation. That's kind of why we're talking about this today, because he's been accused of overestimating some of those values, even though I think I actually said that they might actually be underestimated. But yeah, Jin'taan, would you like to comment on it?
Basically, for those who don't know, they've officially released the announcement of what's going to happen with regards to player-made outposts come the winter expansion, which is where they want to completely start removing both outposts and player-owned starbases, or POSs, as well as a couple of other things, I think. I can't remember. And what's going to happen is that they're going to be replaced with upwell structures, and they're going to be completely unique and all that good stuff. So if you take over someone's space, especially space with a lot of stations in it, like Fountain or Providence, you're going to end up with a lot of very unique resources just handed to you on patch day that you can then take down and sell, or try and hold for some period of time if you really want them.
So about your values, right? Because I think that's the important topic. You put them in the realm of, what was it, between 5 and 25 billion?
I said that, obviously I don't think they're ever going to go for less than, I think 30 bill is the bare minimum that they can ever get to, and that's if they're complete horseshit. I don't think you can ever seed something that unique. There's going to be, 300 and something of them?
I think I meant to say trillion, because I was thinking the regions, right?
Yeah, no, but by region it really depends. I think, there are some regions that are worth fucking nothing because they don't have any stations in them. I think Paragon Sol is a good example of that, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, you got to just look at how much you think stations are how much those Fortizars are going to be worth, and then go from there. I've had a lot of people tell me that they don't think they're ever going to get anything above 1 or 2%, 10, 20% above what a Fortizar is going to be because they're effectively resource free if you take them, you know. To the people who owned them, the people who made them, they're worth 30 billion ISK, because that's how much they spent to make them. But to the people who are taking them, they're completely free, you know, that it's quote unquote free money.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is that Sullen likes to call this a land rush, right? Or a homesteading thing where everyone is going out and trying to get one of these stations. And you called it the gold rush thing. And I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? Because it really depends on, are you going to plant a flag in it? Or are you going to try and repackage it and leave with it? Are you going to trophy it, or are you going to homestead in it? Sullen?
Yeah, I call it the homestead patch because that's really hilarious, because the homestead axe was like basically, oh, we're going to get, if you plant your flag here and say this is mine, or, you know, and then it's like, well, on this day, if you've been there long enough, okay, it's yours then. So it's just funny because it's like really similar to the patch, like, oh, well, if you're the last one to own it on this day, it's yours then. So it's like a land rush. Like, it's really going to be really funny to see what actually happens in the time leading up.
Yeah, and that's why the whole homesteading thing, it's got the value of vanity, right? And I do think that something might happen with a few entities that are very interested in getting something for historical reasons. But the whole thing of being able to be the last one to own it before the transition, and then you got the second one is to actually own it to use it, right? To utilize that land. So the homestead thing makes perfect sense. But there's also that added value of if you package them up and leave with them as trophies, and you being a wormhole or Sullen, you might realize that this could be some of the things that you might want to take into places like wormholes to have and use because of the added benefits, right?
I mean, it could be if you wanted to like keep like maybe all your facilities down. But I mean, like, you also playing a big target on your back, because one of the things in wormholes that is really prominent is you literally have just trophy hunters, like people who, we're not going to try to take your spot. We don't want to live there. We just want to kill you and kick you out because it's hilarious and we can say we did it. So, I mean, maybe you might. I don't know. I know my organization that I do wormhole stuff, I probably would not.
Too risky?
It's going to put, I can guarantee you if you do that, there will be a Reddit thread within a week, and then there will be a conglomerate forced to come just take your candy from you not long after, probably.
So it's something that you would say would only be deployed in a defensible area?
Yeah, or if you're a bigger entity that you can actually, you don't give a shit because no one's going to take you on.
I know for a fact that Hardcocks, the N is silent, have decided that they're going to get at least one of every single faction citadel, including Immensity, and put them up in Rage.
And that I would understand, and I don't expect anything less from them, to be honest.
Because honestly, nothing is. I honestly think Hardcocks are going to be Hardcocks are going to be the first people to ever make the Palatine. I think they'll be the people to do it.
I think we're going to have to wait a little bit still, because it needs to at least have run a year and a half before I even think it's possible to build that thing. I was going to ask Jin'taan a question about the stats, because I don't really have access to that much. I'm a little bit of a high-sec carrier, only shifting numbers back and forth, and I haven't done a lot of industry for 5-6 years now. The industry value to these things, right? How effective is it on a long term? Like, the benefits that you get, how long before that would pay back any potential investment in value?
If you're talking about the faction citadels there, they're not particularly intended for that. I think for most people, the side benefit of most of them having an industry bonus is kind of a red herring. You're not looking to use these things to make money, because it doesn't make sense to use them to make money when you have engineering citadels, which are going to be cheaper and more effective at that. What you need to be looking at is you need to be looking at some of the more subtle things that Fozzie's been talking about publicly. Things like them having better slot layout, more weapons, going to have better fitting, going to have better, HP, which means they're going to take longer to kill or RF. All these things are very, very important, and they do basically give you a step between the 11 billion ISK Fortizar and the 300 billion ISK Keepstar.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that I'm pretty sure that players don't like moving around a lot, even though you can produce them in very efficient engineering complexes. especially when you're doing things like staging out of somewhere, right? Where you can take the hit and the benefit of a little bit cheaper cost in production or a little bit faster production will actually make a difference, right?
Yeah, well, as far as I know, the only one that's getting a bonus to production is the Mar one, which coincidentally is one of the rarer stations, I believe. I think, like, the Caldari is the least used because they were shit for so long. Galante is the most popular.
I think I actually see the Caldari ones being worth money simply because of the fact that now with research is just such a bear, because now everyone's got like research like for invention, for ME, for TE. Like honestly, if I had one spot that I could just do everything, I miss that. I would love that.
It's the one that gets the extra rig, right?
The which one you're talking? The Caldari?
No, the Caldari one gets a bonus to research speed and stuff.
Ah, okay.
Right.
Which one is it that gets an actual extra rig slot?
That will be the Immensi, I believe. The Immensi, you get a bunch of really... Like, the Immensi is easily worth, like, 10 times what the regular one's worth, in my opinion. The stuff that's been publicly talked about is just insane. It's things like, you know, getting an entire bunch of slots, getting an extra service slot, getting extra rigs, getting extra damage. Like, it's gonna be a fucking fortress. It's gonna be, like, Keepstar level fortress, just without the Doomsday.
It's often why I don't understand people who say that you are overestimating the values. I think they're trying to talk down the value or removing interest of going trophy hunting, because if there's one thing that we know about EVE players is that they tend to have a lot of ISK lying around these days, right? And things that just gives them a little bit of a benefit and potentially something on a vanity side. What was it they said that the Blood Raider blueprints were going to be worth?
100, 200 billion?
Well, I heard that the first one is most likely going to go up in the 500 or more billion range.
What? That's crazy.
I know Rendis specifically, not Rendis, it was someone else, someone on the Meta show specifically said that he really thought that I was overestimating them. And I do think that is quite honestly a possibility. There is a possibility I did just speculate in the wrong direction. But if we think about it, if CCP said that these are just going to be 370 medals, like that had literally no in-game value, all they were was like, oh yeah, you held this many stations. How much do you reckon those medals would be worth to people? How much do you reckon that would be worth to a collector?
I was gonna say, just look at like some of the like T2 BPOs. Those things are nowhere even remotely worth what they sell for, but people pay just exorbitant amounts for them, just purely for collection, or I'm gonna invest in this and hang on to it for another 3 years or something.
Yeah, the funny thing about Tech 2 BPOs is that they are mostly used as some sort of weird storage of wealth, because they keep going up in price. So it's basically plant your money there and then walk away. Then when you come back, you're pretty sure that you can sell them and you're going to get the same purchasing power back as you had when you left.
It's worth noting that some of that did come back to people back when they were investing very heavily in T2 BPOs. People thought that they were going to be removed from the game and that CCP was going to give some form of really good compensation for it. So people were just like mass investing in BPOs around that. But that ended up not happening, so the actual BPO scene has dropped since then.
That really speaks to kind of like the stagnant nature of ISK these days, though, doesn't it? It's just, I'm gonna just put it somewhere and not actually use it to explode things. That's
been this thing since like day one. You have to store your wealth if you're not going to be able to work it, because the price of things keep changing. Like what was Tritanium on day one until like 2004-ish was 1 ISK. Now it's 6 times that, right?
Yeah, it just seems like people would rather, I don't know, like the mind's like it's a more mature way to look at things, like closer to real life, you know, like, oh, I want to have a proper nest egg so that when the time comes, I'm gonna put 10 tons of mass on top of your head and take your shit. You know, just
it's a lot worse in real life, because you're also battling things like actual inflation. There's not really actual inflation in EVE, but there is nominal value of things because of the influx of ISK, right?
I was gonna say, I think we have inflation just because of the fact they keep changing things. I remember when I used to, what was it, like, I used to buy like the Rogue for like under 200 mil. and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, and then like Dommies were like 100 mil or something ridiculous.
Dude, Dommies used to be 60 mil. I used to solo Roman Dommies all day, and I was basically spending no money. I miss those days.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we kind of have inflation just because they keep increasing the build costs on everything.
Yeah, but you have to remember that what follows is the hourly income has gone up tremendously. So it's not really inflation, because your hours of wages buys you actually more potentially these days than it might have done 5 years ago. So
CCP seems to think of it like, in, you know, the people who consistently argue for like it shouldn't be a $15 minimum wage. It should be like $20, or it should be like $30 minimum wage. You know, it seems like CCP's taken that argument just on board, and now everyone, as long as they pay even the remotest bit of attention to how to make money in the meta, can easily make what used to be the pinnacle of wealth back when I started playing the game, which was like,
turn on the faucets.
Can you make 100 million ISK an hour? Okay, you're doing great. Now, if you're not making 100 mil an hour, what the fuck are you doing?
What are you doing in your life?
You're doing something fucking terrible.
Yeah, I remember that was pretty much the peak. It's like, oh man, I'm almost there. I'm making like 70 mil an hour, and now it's just like, if you're not making that, you're a peasant.
Exactly. The 25 to 50 million per hour and stuff like mining or ratting was pretty good. Now you're just a joke if you're not hitting like 3 or 5 times that number, right?
I remember ratting going like, oh man, I'm over 20 mil ticks. Now it's like, if I'm not making 40, I'm just like, I have fucked up. What the fuck did I do?
I remember making 30 million ISK an hour in my T1 fit coveter in high sec back when I was a bright-eyed newbie. So I could finance my rifters into low sec.
I don't mean, is that a fair expectation though for a new player coming in to be able to compete right away? I mean, personally, I don't think they should be able to. Yes, it's me. They should have growing pains.
The game's learning curve has like drastically dropped, but also on top of that, the effectiveness curve has massively decreased over the years. And I don't think that's overall a bad thing. Like, if you think about what can a new player have access to now that they had access to in 2011, for example, you know, if you get a new player in, they'll be within from both the base SP upgrades and stuff like that. You can have a new player in a Maulus in 4 or 5 hours. You can have a new player in a Vexer that can make, 30, 40 mil an hour in, a week?
Yeah, if that.
But don't you both think that the whole new player thing is a little bit weird, because there's kind of like this, almost like a wall of a step that they have to jump over, and it takes like, I don't know, a week or 2. And in that period, when they're looking at their progress, right, and the payouts they're getting for stuff they're doing, they think they're actually progressing until they meet another player that just throws like, here you go, have 50 million, here you go, have 100 million, oh, here you go, have $1 billion for your Plex. It's like, these numbers are crazy to them for at least the first week or 2, right?
That's just due to the exponential growth of like player wealth. Like, if you've been making 100 million ISK an hour for the past 2 months, you've got a lot of money. You've got a lot of capital that you can just throw about, and you can use that to make friends, and that's what people see it is. It's not an investment in like new players. It's an investment in having friends, because that's the biggest value. That's the true currency in EVE. Is like, how many people can you call on?
But I think what I'm talking about is the fact that the NPE and the player versus environment side, until you reach a certain point, you're very, very far from what I would call is the real value of labor in EVE. You don't get to sense that until you're like well into the game. I'd say 1-2 months, when you figure out that your time per hour of effective work is in the realm of 50 million, 100 million minimum, right?
Yeah, and that's also at the point at which you run into something that we discussed quite heavily within the CSM, which is the T2 wall, where, okay, you've got a decent ship, you've got a faction cruiser, now you get to eat shit for like 3 months until you can fly a properly fit battleship or a properly fit T2 cruiser.
I was gonna say, I remember when I started, it's just like, woohoo, I'm in my battleship, what do I do now? And then it's just like, grind your face off to get to your first T2 cruiser or something.
Oh, at least it wasn't during the time where like Tengus were even more overpowered than they are now, when they were like if you are not flying a Tengu, you are doing something wrong for PvE. That was the worst timeline. I knew people who were just like, well, I'm gonna put my queue to get a Tengu in 6 months, and I'm gonna leave the game for 6 months, and I'll come back and I'll be in a Tengu.
Okay, help me out here because I've not really looked at training queues for ages. How long does it actually take from 0 to access to the first, say, Tech 3?
That's at least 50 days from 0, at least.
And that's no weapons, no modules, nothing.
And what is that approximately in cost? What it's what 2-3 billion if you were skilling?
Probably a little more than that. 50 days.
Yeah.
And that's literally just haul like bare minimum, not even enough to you know what I mean? Like support skills is nothing. I mean, you could probably get there in what, like 7 injectors, somewhere around there.
Yeah, which is a lot of fucking money. But things
These days, yeah.
Even look at like T3Ds, which is what you need to be, I guess, competitive. I'd say in like faction warfare. If you're not like me, you just don't care about anything. You're just like flying tons of Morlus Navy issues to their death because you really enjoy flying them. If you're like flying, I don't know, you're flying like because you want to take some plexes and have a good fight. You want to be in a Zvical or a Confessor, maybe a Hecate. Jackdaws are kind of okay as well. Those are kind of the good small ships in the game right now. It's still going to take you 30 plus days to get in one. It's going to take you 40-ish days to get support skills. That's perfectly fine. That's the way the game should be. But training those support skills doesn't feel good to a player. And I think there needs to be some more direction towards them.
I mean, that was also part of the reason why I've been pitching literally since day one that I want the remapping just removed from the game. Like, they can leave the implants in all they want. Just get rid of remapping, because I feel like it penalizes players. I mean, I know they give you like the 2 bonus remaps, but I mean, the problem is, it's like, how many times have you met players where they're like, oh, I just was remapped, or I don't even know what remaps are. Like, they have no concept of it. And it's like, just get rid of it, use the implants. You can have learning implants if you don't want to get rid of them, but just get rid of the remapping concept so you're not penalized for a year for mapping the wrong way for something.
Or added like an actual item that you can also buy, so you don't
just for
have to
remaps.
wait away a year or 2.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Again, though, you're addressing the thing is you could buy it, but again, it's like there's so many new players that have no concept of what remapping even is, and they don't even understand exactly how remapping even works, for that matter. I mean, I've met a player that has been playing the game for 3 years, and I was like, well, how are you mapped? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, oh god. You've been
now
playing
I'm gonna
for
have
3
to
years,
explain to you this entire layer of the game that you've never heard of.
Yeah,
but isn't that because it's
3
invisible,
years.
right? Those stats are not visible in your character sheet, which they should be, right? You should see how fast these things make you train, right? So what are the actual ticks? All these visuals that are missing from our character sheet and our in-game client, now they just ripped out the visual guide to show us how many days we had left on our subscription. It's like, why are they not focusing a little bit more on things that are information-based in the client? We can't keep doing this 2003 UI design.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, I don't know, like, I mean, that's a really good example of like stuff that's there and it's complicated, but we don't know why it's there and it's complicated. You know what I mean? Like, there's like, I'm not sure, like,
it's just the UI has aged horribly, right? I was doing a small joke. Right now, I'm running up that the SEC Lounge Mutual Fund, and just as kicks, because I was testing the whole old dividend system, how you pay out to shareholders, and just for shits and giggles, I asked someone that's actually been playing the game for a long time, so do you actually know where the button for dividends are? Where is that situated? And most people have no clue, even in the MD, which would be the ones that are most interested in stuff like that, right? They have no clue where it is. And funny enough, if you do not have director roles, they remove that button. It becomes invisible. And it's located in the most weird place. You have to go to your corporation and then your home, and then it's the lowest button in the middle. It's like, why is it there? Why is it not in your wallet? This is something that's got to do with money transactions. Why is it on the home page of the corporation?
it's a half, it's a half baked feature when you the way you just described it.
It's a mini game. Find features in Eve that no one knows about, and then see if you can get someone else to find them faster than you.
Corporation insurance. That's my favorite feature that no one knows about. Because you can, I don't know if you know this, but your corporation can take out insurance on a ship, and then everyone else can use that ship and get an insurance payout from it, without like having, because normally if you trade or contract a ship, it voids the insurance. But if you just corporation insurance it and have it in a corporation hangar, you can just use that ship over and over again and with different people, and it will still have insurance. So,
I have
like,
no idea where the fuck is that feature.
In the corporation, it's in the corporation section somewhere. I can't remember where. But so if you want to have like a cache of dreads, you don't give them to your people to insure because they might not have the money. You never know. You insure it as the corporation, and then the corporation gets the money back. Oh, it's so easy.
Man, that sounds so broken.
It's been in the game
I'm gonna
for
have to
years.
look this up now.
That sounds super broken.
For years, no one knows about it. It's my favorite obscure feature to ask.
You have to make a video for that, Jin'taan.
I know, right?
You have to make a small video showing it.
Oh, well, that's kind of like if I was
Get rid of it. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
only for members of your corporation, though. So, and only
But-
if you use the corporation hangers. It's really fucking weird. It's the
I
weirdest
think that's a
feature.
good place to segue into the whole CSM thing. And I think I coined recently that the CSM is really more a priesthood that do the bidding of the players by praying to the gods on behalf of the players.
I love this analogy.
And I think my argument grew out again out of the fact that I'm getting a little bit more into actually doing stuff in game and trying to invest money and play that whole market meta. And one of the things that I'm most afraid of is one of those force majeure divine intervention things where CCP suddenly changes something and it potentially cuts my entire NAV by 10, 15, 20%. And now that I've actually got real investors, then I have to explain to them, this is force majeure, this is not my doing. The best I can do is I can go to my CSM representative and ask them to pray to the gods for me, right?
It's like we're all going up to Mount Olympus, like dressed in robes.
It's exactly.
And do some crazy things in the middle of the day.
And recently, I think, could you please go and pray to Team 5 gods and ask them why they've changed this much?
You're not wrong. Like, sometimes it does feel like you're blowing against the wind with CCP.
Which god shall I pray to today and make sure that it's not the wrong one who ignores my prayers?
Yeah, because
You do have to pray to the right god in CCP, I tell you that.
Yeah, and the most friendly ones seems to be the ones that we were just talking about because they tend to work very fast. I don't know if it's because it's easier, the stuff that they do than other groups because it doesn't have as much, I don't know, procedures behind it. But things like UI things, we've been getting a lot of nice changes, a lot of upgrades. And next patch, I think we're actually getting one of the things that I've been begging for a long time, that you can sort by the value of a stack. And this is such an obvious thing that you should have had long ago, and now we're finally getting it. And I'm of course referring to Karkur and Puncturis, right? That tend to be really fast at implementing things that the players have asked for if they are reasonable.
Well, if it's a good feature and it's something they can do relatively simply, they tend to do it. They're not just terrible people who are like, yes, let the players suffer. They do want to make a good game, I promise.
Just sitting there, your tears are so yummy and delicious.
I mean, is
them
it
in my goblet?
is CCP actually big enough to actually manage such a large game like Eve?
CCP is a pretty fucking big company. It's just that a lot of them aren't directly involved in design. Like, you forget that they have like. Actually, I don't know if I can say how many employees they have. I think I probably.
They have like 650 or something.
A lot of employees. We'll just leave it at
They have a lot of employees, but some of them don't work on Eve. They have a shitload of artists, like a fucking lot of artists.
Yeah, I was
Right,
gonna
they do
say,
great
man.
work, but they don't decide the game.
Which is also why we get a lot of fluff and shinies, but not as often do we get changes that are related to, let's use the horrible word, legacy code.
Well, I mean, like, one of the things that a lot of people don't take into consideration whenever they're complaining about, like, coding with this game is that most other games don't continue using the same game after a decade. They just say, all right, fuck it, that's it. We're making Eve 2. We're done. We're making Eve 2.
What the fuck did you just pour out? That looked like a fucking jerry can. You fucking drinking antifreeze? Have you given up? Oh no, it's just a...
It really does. You know, it really does, man.
It does!
No, but yeah, I mean, like, one of the things a lot of people don't consider is that a lot of gaming companies, they just say screw it when it gets to a certain point and stop investing into the code that they still have. It's just because in some ways it's easier to just make an entire game from scratch rather than keep building off of code that you have to, but CCP still using the same game. It's not the original code, but it's like they have to keep building off of it. So, I mean, I applaud them for that, to be honest.
But there's also another thing that's really overlooked, right? If you, because you mentioned the Eve 2.0, and it's been suggested so many times. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we all agreed that, okay, let's do an Eve 2.0. I think actually remaking all the features and deciding which ones have to go in, which ones do we abandon, why do we abandon them, and why do we need to upgrade or improve other features that are already in the game. I think the production time would actually be worse than just turning knobs and fixing things.
Let's just put it in perspective. How long have we had pauses, and how long have they wanted to get rid of them?
Years.
Since day one, they wanted to replace pauses.
I mean, like, and that's one of those things where it's like, if they just made a new game, they would just not even include it. Like, they don't have to even bother with it, and yet they have to basically, they've had to develop around it for so long. And now they're finally kind of pulling the trigger. I mean, that's why I was kind of joking with somebody. I think all said and done, whenever they get all these structures rolled out, and you know, they completely eliminated all the legacy structures out of the game, it's basically going to be the closest thing we will have to Eve 2.0, because it's just going to be such a different game by that point.
Yeah, it's also there's so many genies that they just can't put back in that bottle, though. Like, I mean, people within CCP have kind of semi-publicly talked about the fact that if they knew how the game would develop, they would never have introduced super capitals. They fundamentally think that super capitals are bad for the game in the way they were originally designed, and they've got them to a point now where they are good. But they have talked previously that had they known how it was going to develop, they would never have introduced them. They would have kept that way away from the game, because it wasn't the way they wanted to design.
I mean,
that's why I was pointing out that I have always seen the whole Crest and API and now ESI as CCP's attempt to do what I call bypass surgery. That they're basically trying to take some things to put it out of client so they can rip the client apart while these things are kind of still working. And now they have moved so much onto those platforms that I think it's very likely that they can now take some of these things out and turn the knobs, because now they also know exactly where they are, right?
I mean, I'd hate to speculate on CCP's ability or inability to code about something, because that's coming pretty close to the NDA, which is like the fucking priesthood's oath of silence in this long extended analogy.
Yeah, speaking of, because Sullen is about to be defrocked, when are you allowed to talk about things again?
7 years, isn't it? Oh wait, is it 5?
It's 7, and it's also, bear in mind, it refreshes if they ever tell you anything.
Yeah, that's true.
That's basically a forever.
So they just need to leak a little bit every 6 months, and it just extends it forever?
Yep, that's the NDA. You just they got you for life, boy.
Yeah, so wait, yeah, you were saying it's similar to the House of Lords there at one point, Caleb?
Well, yeah, I did say that they take the former CSM members, not myself, because I am past the 7 years, so point is that you then get moved into that House of Lords, and you actually play a very, very vital and very important role. And I like seeing what you've been doing lately, really taking part in it and showing that just because you're not on the CSM anymore, just because you're not in the priesthood, you move into a different role that's higher than, say, a focus group member, a little bit lower than an active CSM member, but still extremely important to go in and say, oh, you're missing something. In this case, I would like to see someone like yourself and similarly minded go in and point out when stuff like the error thing maybe support the existing CSM and say, well, this is what that topic is about, and there's more to it than is being presented at the table.
But isn't that a lot of extra like expectations on someone that's really like, you know, like not in the gang anymore?
I mean, there's no expectations really, but I mean, like, you have a lot of connections, and you get a lot of connections when you're on the CSM, especially if you're someone that like devs, like, I don't know how to say it in a nice way, devs want to talk to or enjoy talking to, and aren't, you know, spurging away, just completely someone they don't want to listen to. I mean, you know, I'm sure like if I were to just, you know, send Fozzie a tweet like in a PM and just be like, hey, this is really fucked, you should take a look at it, I'll probably just respond back, yep, we're looking into it already, or something like that. But I mean, you know, you make a lot of connections, so it's like you're never fully out. And previous CSMs always talk about how like if you want to be involved, there's ways you can still be involved.
I think what I see is many people have a tendency of yelling on Reddit and stuff like that, and claiming that CCP is doing favoritism. But really, this is something beyond favoritism. This is normal human behavior. This is the fact that if you are working at CCP as an artist, and someone in the player base that are very knowledgeable about art comes to you and suggests things or asks you questions, of course you're going to have an easier way of getting access than if you are some random that doesn't actually know what the work entails and have no understanding of it, right?
Yeah, and also once you have an NDA, that kind of, as you said, they could keep leaking you stuff, and there's nothing stating that devs can't actually talk to you either, just because you're not on the CSM. Particularly since once you have an NDA, that kind of is like gives them the okay if they want to ask you about things, and they still keep in contact, they can.
Actually, I've been kind of curious about that whole thing too. It's like, has something like the CSM actually been a barrier for CCP to actually like really learn their game and hopefully be in a place where they're releasing products that are actually like closer to finished than something that needs a whole lot of tweaking once it's been like sent out?
I think no matter what CCP releases, you got to understand that they have a different understanding of the game than what most players do, just because of the amount of internal number crafting, internal theory crafting, and also internal playtesting, and just like you know a great example of this is when they talked about, you know, killing citadels. When they talked about that, when they talked about, oh yeah, you know, we took like 20 dreads and we tried to kill it and we lost tons of them and didn't reinforce it, and now we just like laugh at them because they didn't realize that the way to kill them was to just sit a million miles away and never be in trouble, because they're looking at things from a very conventional standpoint, because that's how they designed them. Eve players are the best penetration testers in the world. If you make one mistake in your game, they'll fuck you.
I was mentioning this in the chat in the meet show today, but I'd like to get back a little bit on the force majeure thing, because now what we saw is that they're talking about the T3 changes, and one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about is when the CSM have talked about these changes, how much detail is done and presented by CCP to convince you that this is not going to be a horrible disruption. Like some people were talking about the fact that they might be changing the mass, so now the ecosystem when it comes to things like wormholes and the speed with which a wormhole collapses is going to change the whole way that they're going to be able to utilize the T3s. But I'm even more interested in, what about the fact that you have this dynamic of being able to interchange rigs? So of course you might get a little bit more uptake in people needing different rigs for the same ship, so that could increase the demand, but then potentially you're not going to be losing as many as before. So there's just ecosystem and economy changes, how much of that is shown in advance what CCP expects this to do? Because sometimes I have the feeling that there's nothing.
I was gonna say, even if they did show us, I don't think we could tell if they showed us those numbers in terms of how much they expect. But I mean, the thing about the rigs though is that T3s are not really a very common thing to die anyways. They're not, compared to like other ships that you're rigging all the time. T3s are not a real common ship that are dying compared to the other ones. So the thing is, I think that after this change, you'll be able to use T3s for a lot more utility, so you might actually see an increase in them being bought and built, which would increase the demand then for the rigs, as opposed to decreasing it. Because as you were saying, but I mean, the thing is also, like, when people build their T3s now, they usually build it for one purpose, and it's set that way. They're not, usually people aren't just destroying their rigs and their T3s left and right. So I honestly doubt that would be really decreasing that much.
So hardly any speculation is shown up front when you guys discuss balancing and changes.
Well, we don't really get much time to discuss balancing in general. I think that's one of the great downsides of the CSM right now, is that we aren't really spending much time on it. It's more about giving feedback about features, talking about the community and the health of it. Balance in general does seem to be a small part of CCP's overall planning, as well as, like, how much we're involved in it.
I mean, as a trader, I'm actually not too concerned on what the final product of the T3s are going to be. I'm actually more concerned if I'm thinking that a proper balancing pass of the T3 cruisers will not just involve the T3 cruisers itself. It'll actually involve the slew of racial Tech 2 cruisers that they're supposed to be copying. So I'm more curious on how that's going to shake up, not just the Tech 3 cruiser itself, but the Tech 2 faction cruisers that may end up having to be probably balanced because of how the Tech 3 cruisers behave in the first place.
I think that's kind of one of the reasons they're doing it as well, because we all know that, like, there's some Tech 2 cruisers that people will prefer over the T3. Falcons come to mind, that a lot of people love using Falcons over a T3. I mean, but then there's also others that it's kind of like one of those things, like, why wouldn't you use a T3? Like, when I think of the Nuding Legion versus the Curse or the Pilgrim, 9 times out of 10 people are going to use the Nuding Legion because it just throttle rates how much it can nude out compared to the other ones. So
that's something to talk about, though, that the fact that T3s right now are used primarily because they're better at functions than other ships that should be more specialized than them.
Right, and I think that one of the reasons why they're doing this balance pass is that as well. I think that they're gonna I mean, they also have the focus group that they formed, that they just announced yesterday, that are gonna be helping them kind of figure out where is a good balance point where they can keep this. If I had to guess, I would say they'll probably be bringing them more in line so that there is a reason why it'd be good to use this, but in certain cases it might be good to use the T2 as well, which that's going to be tricky. I'm hoping they get it right, but it will definitely be tricky.
Is it kind of fair to expect, though, that once everything's said and done, that it's fair to think that Tech 2 cruisers per role is going to be stronger than any Tech 3 cruiser trying to copy that role?
I do not know, and I would not be able to tell you.
Fair enough.
I was about to say that. I was like, I don't know, and if I did, we couldn't tell you
that. I guess that's my dream, at least, as a trader, because it's like there's no. It's so hard to buy and sell these dang Tech 2 cruisers because people don't get them. People don't buy them. They prefer to get the Tech 3 cruisers.
Well, the only Tech 2 cruisers that we see widespread adoption are those that do something that Tech 3s can't. You have things like the Cerberus. What can the Cerberus do that the Tech 2 can't? Shoot at 160 kilometers. We see... what are the fucking Tech 2?
The D-scan immunity.
Sometimes the Ishtar, because people don't want to use the Vex navies. That's kind of about it. Logistics.
I would like to...
About E-War ones, though, right?
Yeah, E-War ones, yeah, definitely.
Sullen, when did you get on the CSM the first time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
When was CSM 11 the first time you got on the CSM?
Yeah, I was not on the CSM before CSM 11.
Well,
same with Jin'taan.
Yeah.
Because what I'm wondering is, I think I've mentioned this once or twice. A lot of MMOs are trying to rethink the whole balance of the equivalent to modules, so equipment and stuff like that, and trying to bring in that it's all player build and that the player build is always the best stuff in game and loot is secondary, right? And in the past, I had the same feeling about EVE until you started having the creep of the high-end loot drops, right? How much talk have CCP had with the CSM about the loot drop problem?
I don't think. I think what you don't understand is that in terms like equipment in EVE is fundamentally different to equipment in other MMOs, primarily because there is an attrition of that equipment. You're not looking at something where you've got to get shitloads of resources, bundle them up into one big thing, and then that's your sink. Now you have that item. That's not the case in EVE. If you have that item, you can use it on a ship, but when that ship dies, there's a chance that equipment now leaves, and it's necessary to have that be the case for the highest end equipment. So you have to control the rates at which it's coming into the economy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean with the fact that loot-based drops, so RNG things that can creep over time, which is very much proven with things like, well, materials, right? The fact that at a point where the influx has been too easy to milk as a teat, and then you have so much of it that it doesn't have a value anymore, and it outcompetes all the other ecosystem production that players do, right?
Well, so, I mean, the problem with, pirate faction battleships are kind of having their own problem right now because of the fact that it's one of those things where it's like they never, I guess, took into account how much we like to make money and how much we like to do repetitive shit that will make us more wealthy. And the problem with the pirate faction battleships is that all of their value was originally from their rarity of their BPCs. And one of the big things that kind of hurt the value of those is when they made that patch a couple of years ago that made it so that you would never have an escalation more than 6 jumps away from the base. Now that was great in terms of actually getting the escalations, but that was also a massive nerf to the value of the BPCs, because now all of a sudden, I remember when we lived in Branch, we'd get an escalation, and that son of a bitch would be like 15 jumps into venal. Like, sorry, no, I'm not going to go do that. Whereas now it's like, as long as you're not on a border system, you can guarantee you'll get escalations that you could probably go run. So that increased how much they could run them. And then the other problem with them then is that there's no hard limit on how cheap that it costs to build in comparison to the T1 variant, other than the mineral cost. So the thing is, like with Navy faction ships, they're actually hard limited how cheap they can get. They will never get cheaper than their T1 variant simply because of the limitations put on it. The problem is with the pirate faction, there's none of those limitations because they never conceived that it would be ever farmed to that point that it would be cheaper, but it is now.
It's also worth noting that we have had a lot of power creep in terms of the amount of like raw sites you can run per time. Like, we actually saw the original spike of this before the super carriers started to come through, because people started to figure out how to properly smart bomb rat. I have to say that the Imperium News and Crossing Zebras articles that both came out within a 1 month span of each other on how to smart bomb rat fucking destroyed that economy.
Oh
like,
gosh, yeah.
Just publicizing the fact of, like, here's how you can get 10 escalations in an hour fairly effectively, just fucking nuked that market.
I think I want to drop a little bit of a bomb. I know this is something that at least the market interested people will know a little bit more about, but how come CCP have not actually given any serious thought into cyclicals, into things with expiration dates, right? Personally, I think it's something that could be tested in like drop productions. So your boosters actually have an expiration date. And if you do not get it sold to market until then, and if you're trying to overstock, eventually your stock is going to start rotting and depleting. And this ties into the question with the blueprints, right? Why don't we have a expiration date on blueprint copies so we didn't have that overproduction and creep endlessly?
Would you like
That
the
sounds so
technical
dangerous.
answer, or would you like the technical answer or the game design answer? Because there's two reasons.
Well, I know that there is
an
an expiration date on items in the game already, right? They have had boosters that have expiration date, but did they use that?
No, they didn't. They did.
Is that because they did it
had,
manually?
Those had an expiration date built into the item type. So what that was is it was done well, not manually, but like it was assigned that this item full stop will stop working on this exact date. If you did that with boosters, it is not the current way the inventory system works. It's unable to track when this item was first created if you like repackage it, basically. So
I mean, I'm totally with you, Caleb. I would love to see it. I doubt it will, though. There's also some people that are very adamantly against any type of timed destruction thing. Personally, I would love it if Plexus had a time till they just destroyed, because I would love to see the world catch on fire.
Like taxation systems where you buy or pay your tax and can put a little sticker
that would be even better. Actually, you just gave me a better idea. The longer you hold on to Plex, the higher that the ISK sync taxes apply to it. Like,
I'd love to have isotopes slowly degrade over time, because that's just scientifically accurate.
That sounds so dirty.
That would also be hilarious.
That's also why I mentioned boosters and similar things that would have an expiration date in real life, right? Because it's kind of like a food item, and it's just, again the same with blueprint copies. It's really something that I think CCP needs to consider, because cyclicals are really healthy for an economy, whether it's Plex, blueprint copies, or things that are kind of like food-based expendables, right?
Here's an idea. What if all the minerals in the game disappeared 6 months after they were mined? So you had to
Holy shit, man!
You could never stockpile minerals. You had to build.
That's like not being able to stockpile oil. That's not really a good idea.
It'd be fun.
I mean, I think the main core of these types of arguments is, should CCP be more in tune with tweaking sources of materials a lot more frequently than they are now? Because I don't think they are, to be honest, compared to even other MMOs that I play. As far as tweaking like small things in the economy, drop rates, things like that, they do it so rarely.
I think some of that is I don't think we're talking about the same thing there. I think talking about actual drop rate would be a better discussion to have. Things like the respawn rate of, say, mining anomalies is by far the bigger problem than how much rock was mined, because it puts a downward trend on like moving your rock wheel around and when they're going to be vulnerable.
This is where I should find the Dirk screaming at clouds. I think he's been talking about this topic for a little bit, and I have been applauding it. The whole distribution of wealth, and it also brings up the topic we had last episode, where I was basically applauding Apothy for being the only one that asked a good question of Aerith on the show, because he asked the whole thing about capacity of a region, and I've talked to Sullen about this a little bit. The fact that there's just way too many resources available in EVE. It's as if it's designed for, I'd say, almost 10 times the amount of players.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back even to ICE, because people talk about, like, why is there 4-hour limitations on ICE? And a lot of them either don't remember or weren't here for it back in the old school ICE days, where it was like, before they put that 4-hour limit on it, I forget what it was, but it was like something ridiculous. Like the total ice being produced in the game every day was less than 25, the total ice necessary to run everything in the game that needed isotopes. So every POS, every carrier that was running stuff, they basically were able to calculate it, and it was like the amount of ice being produced every day, it would only consume 25% of it. So every day you had 3 times the ice that the entire game could run being produced. And that's why they were like, we have to limit this. Like, there's going to be 4-hour limits. So basically to cap how much you can mine. And that was back when isotopes were like in the complete gutter. When you'd see like the 40-man Mackinac fleets like undocking, and every ice belt was just mining all day long.
Yeah, I mean that's
At that time you didn't have ice rocks popping. They were just you could just mine these forever now.
it's a race to the bottom, right? Because people don't care as long as we're getting something out of it. They don't care. They don't care.
Oh yeah, what's that? You say the isotopes dropped another few decimal points? That's all right. I'll just throw 3 more Mackinacs on and skill. We'll be good.
They were also hilariously easy to bot, but that's a thing for another day. I don't think any design decisions were made around that.
I think what I was talking about way back when my suggestion was that, say for something like static asteroid belts, I know that we now know that we don't really know where to fix that in the code, but my suggestion when I was discussing this was multiply the amount of ore in each belt by something like 30, and then make it only respawn when it's depleted. So, and then only on a timer that says 30 days after it's depleted, it actually respawns. Because what you would get from that is you would have more resources in space. That means that you have to be in that specific location for longer time and be assailable, right? You can be attacked and you can have contest going on in that resource. Same with anomalies, right? Make them bigger, but make the spawn rate a lot slower.
I mean, is that gonna allow for room for growth if a group that's legitimately small, not a part of a coalition or whatever, actually going in there and trying to set up their footprint, and turn the internal economy of that group, is that going to be enough to do it that way?
I think the only problem with it would be that, again, then we're back to the scaling thing with things like the numbers that we got from Dell, that they're only at 60% of the potential max capacity, that big organizations would benefit by being able to get resources rather fast, but they would still deplete. That means that then they would become hungry and need to find other places to get it. So there's a little bit of an upside, but also a major downside for the fact that could actually spread out aggression.
I mean, I don't know, like, I guess for someone who's actually started, like, legit, like, small groups, I don't know, man, like, a cap like that, that's
how did those small groups go? Did they die in a fire like they always have since the beginning of fucking time?
More of people getting burnt, they got bored, like, we couldn't make that transition to doing other things, scaled activities, we couldn't, failed at it several times.
Yeah, you need a critical mass of people for both like leadership redundancy and like content creation redundancy. That's a big one. If you have like 2 dudes who are creating all the content for your alliance, like 2 FCs or I don't know, 2 people mining ops, you lose those 2 guys. Your group no longer exists. It just dies.
I mean, that was one of the reasons why low-class wormholes were actually really great. I mean, one of the things that someone told me one time that actually, after I heard it, I was like, that actually makes sense. Low-class wormholes were actually one of the greatest things. It was like one of the only places that small groups could actually stake a claim, I guess you could say. Because it was they kind of keep you in check. Because like obviously C1, C2s are so low on the totem pole in their worth. Well, C1's more than C2s, but yeah, like you'll see groups less than 5 actual people, not all, it's just actually 5 people, and they are running like a wormhole and stuff down there. It's one of the few places you'll see that.
I know for a fact a lot of CCP's main characters, like their non-dev characters, are in wormholes, like low-class wormholes, and you should enjoy playing with them.
Yeah, and you'll never know which ones they are.
Bum, bum, bum.
I mean, you don't.
That's all, and that's one of the reasons why people talk about like what does the CSM do, because CCP plays their own game. The problem is it's like if you're a developer there, you're never going to be able to really experience the game like you did before you were a developer, because it's like the ins and outs in ways that other people don't. And on top of that, you're limited because it's like you can't let people know you're a dev. So especially some of the more famous, like if Fozzie was ever playing the game and he joined your corp and got on comms, I guarantee half your corp would be like, oh, it's Fozzie. It's like,
yeah.
Man, character. son of a bitch, you know, and done. And now they have to put them into character protection services.
I mean, like,
can't we link them into the ISD and let the ISD do more play with the NPC content and the new AI, and just make sure that there's oversight so they don't use GM hacks?
What do you mean? I don't
Yeah,
think I
yeah,
understand.
that does not make sense. Question.
Oh, I'm saying that I wouldn't mind that, say, Fozzie was running around and playing with Blood Raiders and being a Blood Raider in the game and having ISD members being part of that group, as long as we know that they're not necessarily cheating.
I was gonna say they have done that before. They had wasn't the Titan last time in HiSec? Wasn't that piloted by a CCB?
Yeah, but what you're talking about is live events, which the last time the ISDs were trusted to do that ended up with someone getting given a hell by the angels, and people got very annoyed. And now that program no longer exists.
Fail.
To bring up some old drama.
You are why we can't have nice things.
That's you, buddy. That's you.
Fucking that team.
And that's funny, right? Because that's not even the player's fault.
Yeah. I mean, that's I can totally get like kind of like day-to-day type play, you know. But like, man, as a indie market dude, man, it really feels a lot of times like they don't know what the fuck is going on with the economy. Maybe it's just me.
I think what I was referring to is something like what we've seen in other games called monster play, right? Where you can't really do anything with it except kill the other players.
Yeah, like, realistically though, like, on a fundamental level, Eve just has so many options of play styles that even though the devs did play the game, like, some devs played the game at a very, very high level. You have, you know, Kill2, who became CCP Rise. He was one of the fucking best solo, well, probably not the best solo PvPers, but, like, he made amazing content and amazing guides on how to solo PvP. He was one of the keys in breaking into the Talos meta back in 2013, 2014. You have Ravy, an incredibly good AT spy. That man knows the AT like no one else in the game. He knows everything about 12-man, 10-mans, and he could tell you the stats of every single ship in the game. But has he ever FC 200 people? No. Has he ever built a super capital fleet? No. Has he ever, I don't know, has he ever run Damsel in Distress 20 times? No. Like, you know, there's just fundamental things that, you know, Eve just has so many options for specialization in career path that you can never fundamentally experience them all, and that's one of the reasons why the CSM is needed, just to inject more of those career options into like the consciousness of CCP. I guarantee you they wouldn't think about FCing, for example, if it wasn't for FCs constantly being on the CSM and talking to CCP about, like, hey, can you not fuck FCs? Thanks.
Yeah, it's a strange problem, you know, especially with I've had a few of my friends that actually tried Eve, and then it's just the same damn thing, man. Like, there's a point where they either clicks or it doesn't, and it just didn't. You know, and I don't know. Yeah, it's one of the positives and negatives, like, simultaneously. Like, you know, Eve is the only legit sandbox game out there.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
If you say otherwise, I'll fight you. You know, it's one of those
things.
things.
To fight me, or especially not on fandom of this game. I've been addicted to this shit for way too long.
Right.
I'd like to just shift a little bit outside of our normal comfort zone, because it's something that I'm a little bit interested in now, especially with the AT coming up. Things that I've been calling brand unification, and the fact that we might, in a very near future, be able to play so many different games from CCP. Is that at all something that the CSM members themselves talk about, or is it something that's being discussed with CCP? Because I know that I was told that there's no actual communications from the EVE Online CSM and then any of the other brands. So are you totally in the dark, or do you get any information on where things are moving?
Like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, like, Eve Valkyrie and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm thinking, because now we've got Eve Valkyrie, we've got Gunjack, we've got Spark coming out just around the corner, We got the Resurrection of Dust in the form of Project Nova coming out. So for the topic of player retention that Roden was just talking about, the fact that people come into EVE and then they don't really get it and then they fuck off again, right? If there was these other brands available, so you would have something to run to that still keeps you in the same, call it, sandbox. Isn't that something that should be discussed in the CSM and with the existing EVE player base? Because the other games might have a following, but if they are ever going to be integrated into the same universe, shouldn't we talk about this in one place?
Well, I was going to say, before we get into that, I'm curious, do you think that Dust was correct in launching on the PS3 before you...
No.
I think it was one of the worst.
This is an important question because I want to know, do you think that was a good decision or a bad decision?
It was the most terrible decision ever. Locking yourself into a platform with limited longevity and making it unavailable to the existing player base unless they bought a new piece of hardware. It was the dumbest move ever, and I don't understand it to this day.
So one of the reasons why CCP did that, and they talked about this kind of in retrospect. This is nothing that I learned from being on CSM, by the way. So, but one of the reasons behind that is, and people ask like, why didn't they launch it on PC? The thing is, PC gamers already know about EVE. It's any PC gamer or any gamer on a PC, if they don't play EVE, has heard of EVE, even if they don't play it. The reasoning behind putting Dust on a console, though, is because most console players are not PC gamers, and so the thing was, by tapping into that, you're actually tapping into a resource that you would not even have exist. Period. Because
isn't that going too far off segment? Right, you're going to a segment so far.
No. Because you're talking about like, wouldn't it be great if we could have things we could wrangle people in? And so it was funny because you mentioned that, and I'm just thinking it's kind of what they were actually going for when they launched on the PS3. They wanted to get people.
No, that's not what I said. I said the opposite. I said we should not have brand unification or use the other brands to try and reach new segments. That's my personal view, because you can't really necessarily compete against existing brands in those areas. I think what CCP should do is integrate and do brand unification and make sure that EVE players never need to leave to play an FPS or leave to play a VR game. That's a lot more powerful, because that player retention then the EVE effect, EVE Online effect, could spill over into the other brands and be as strong in brand loyalty, something that you don't see in other games.
Well, I'll tell you this much. As we all know, whatever Dust replacement is being made by EVE or CCP Shanghai. So
No. It's moved back, right?
I don't know about that.
It has been moved.
Yeah, it was all moved back to Iceland, and it was pretty much announced. And I believe that there is at least a rumor of a launch date of middle of December.
Let me be clear here, though. The CSM does not get to talk to anyone who isn't to do with EVE, officially. Yeah. Like, maybe you find someone on your lunch break whose dick you can suck to get some form of information, but that's completely out of the realms of CCP's, like...
So cool.
I think it was actually themselves that disclosed this in an interview recently, a Project Nova interview. But the point is that now Oculus is talking about the brand unification. It didn't work when you were trying to fish in another pond, right? With Dust, they were trying to fish in another pond. Then that's not brand unification. That does not mean that I can put down EVE or tap into another client and play Dust while I'm waiting for things or my friends to come online to play EVE with me, right? It's a totally different ecosystem from a gaming perspective.
Yeah, I mean, when Dust was around, I'll be honest, I totally bought it to the hype, man. It's like the reason I bought a PlayStation.
A lot of people don't know this about me at this point, but I actually got an EVE from Dust.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate that, while I was in, the Dust community, people were just genuinely pleased with the product, to be honest, the folks that I played with at least. A free-to-play shooter that's got the skilling concept of EVE. People were buying into it. It's just unfortunate that it closed down.
Yeah, and it was not a really good shooter, right?
I mean, I think that a lot of that, I don't want to get too much in the weeds with Dust, but I mean, a lot of that was because of the fact that when they made Dust, they kind of ignored the ability that they could have tapped into one of a slew of first-person shooters for consoles that has been doing it for, over a decade. And rather than doing that, they kind of were like, nah, we got this, we're going to design it ourselves. And I can tell you right now, because I've been an avid first-person shooter on consoles, that there was a lot of things in Dust that it was like, wait, what? Like, I haven't seen this shit since 2002. Things that basically they missed out on because they didn't have other people that were already developing similar things. Like, honestly, it's funny because people joked about it. If they would have just went to Bungie and said, here's our design we want, and we want you to actually make the gameplay mechanics, it probably would have been amazing.
So, Jin'taan,
we wouldn't have the shit loaded that is Destiny anymore, which I would be okay with.
Never played it.
You're not under NDA now, so you can't use the finger on me. Your opinion on the whole other brand thing in CCP's basket, do you think that this is going to kick off? Because it's been promised for a long time, and it looks like some of it might be taking off now. Where do you think we're going to be come winter and next year?
I don't know, and I won't be able to tell you. Like, I don't know anything about what's going to happen with Project Legion. I have played the demos and stuff, like when they were at FanFest last time. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great shooter. Like, I could sit here and actually give like a breakdown of what Project Nova was like in that one time I got to play it. But honestly, I have more experience with like Spark and Project Arena, because that's the person whose particular dick I chose to suck last time I was at the summit.
But don't you agree that a lot of EVE players tend to tap out and play other games? And
of course, every gamer's got a wargaming account, duh.
Yeah, exactly. But
fuck you. No, I don't.
When we now have all these other brands potentially at our fingertips, even if we get something like, I don't know, account integration, so we're using the same account, the same avatar, don't you think that will keep players inside the New Eden universe for longer than they might actually do now?
The thing is, I play other games to get away from EVE. Like, when I play CSGO, I don't want it to be EVE Online. I don't want anyone from EVE Online to know what I'm doing. I just want to disappear and just pop some heads off and speak angrily in Russian for about 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the way the social meta happens in EVE, right? You kind of just want to be anonymous for a while and, be a dickhead destroyer in World of Warships, because you can.
You're saying that like I'm not just a dickhead destroyer.
You're a dickhead anywhere, Jin. It's like, but my point is that what about all the social groups that you have already established in EVE? When you leave EVE to play another game, do you do that to get away from those groups, or would you like those groups to actually follow you into those games?
I think it depends, because I mean, even when I'm playing like other games, it's yes and no. Sometimes I'm playing my other games and I'm still in the same comms with my I'm still on EVE comms and I'm bullshitting with like my corp and whatnot. But there's definitely other times where I'm just like, fuck this, I'm gonna not be in TeamSpeak and enjoy just killing this battleship or something.
I'm just saying this because I am looking forward to the chance of, if not being fragged, then at least shooting Jin'taan in the face at least once or twice in Project Nova.
I think we all are. Like, I'm definitely like, if Project Nova comes out, it's on the PC, I'm gonna fucking play it. Like, I wasn't like enough into Dust that was gonna buy a fucking PS3 because like I got better things to do with my money.
Same here. It's just I would like to collect corpses of Jin'taan in Dust because I might not have a chance to actually go to that shithole that is probably in.
I mean, the real.
The question is,
man, now we're singing.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, the real kicker for
will those corpses be able to unban anime in Waffles? That's the real question.
See, if I was Jin'taan, I would literally just like start self-destructing myself and just have a
Sell them.
Just have all of exactly. That's what I would be doing. I often said that, like, if anyone, I told my alliance, because like one of the guys in my alliance, I self-destructed on our Citadel, and he was like, "Oh, I'm collecting that Sullen corpse," and I was like, just so you know, if this ever becomes a thing, I'm just gonna start self-destructing and just selling my corpses to make money off of all you fucking morons. If I was Jin, that's exactly what I would be doing.
I went the opposite route. I was like, nah, man, my corpses can only be won by fucking effort. That's the currency I want. Give me good fights and I'll give you a corpse. How about that?
I mean, as far as that,
You're not going to be able to get one of my corpses until they bring on walking station.
Right.
Yeah, because you don't undock.
Exactly.
I mean, as far as that,
Until the day
that was
that
actually
Sullen
really
can sneak up on me and then stab me in the back in the station, there's not going to be a Caleb corpse in.
If I do that at Amsterdam, does that count? I'm still getting on this train of convincing you to come to Amsterdam, dude. You gotta do it. It's
We
so
are
good.
coming. We're both
Yes.
coming.
Awesome.
as far as
Just to be really freakish, we already booked our Airbnb for FanFest 2018.
I mean, as far as the connection between these games, I mean, do they have to be like actual like in-game connections, or could they just be just like it all falls under like the CCP banners? Is that enough?
I don't think it's enough. I think I don't think we need anything like bombardments in space and all of that stuff, but something like at least a subtle economic
Hey, I don't know what you're
integration.
talking about. I will tell you right now, I first started getting into Eve because of the fact I wanted to have an orbital bombardment character in Dust, and it was fucking hilarious. It was so,
I did that.
It was a good
fucking
idea. It's
amazing.
just technically, I believe they struggled to implement it, right? And I don't know.
It was
if they
boring
want
as
to do
shit
that
for the
again.
Eve player, but for the Dust player, when you just call it down, I think it was like you could call it down like every 5 minutes. It was just hilarious, just the amount of destruction it would cause for the other team.
Yeah, I mean,
Not to mention you got kill bales too.
it was legit It was N+1 in Dust. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so what you're saying is that if they do it this time by changing the POCOs, right? So the POCOs are a bit like structures now, and they can be manned. Then you don't necessarily need a ship. You can just spontaneously man any structure like that, and the availability of aerial bombardments will be a lot easier.
I mean, you could, but it doesn't have the same effect as having a ship on grid on the Eve side, because you have to
No, but
deploy.
it would
You know
be
what I
the
mean?
same thing, and it would be a more interesting thing to contest and attack, right? Because POCOs would still be the weakest of all the structures. So it would be like the mini thing that people have been asking for.
Yeah. I mean, whatever connection happens, I mean, hopefully it's something that's appealing from a gameplay perspective, and something that makes a lot of sense to connect. Like when the market stuff, when that was that's a reasonable amount of speculation that was happening when Dust was around with that stuff, but of course it didn't happen.
I just hope they bring the avatars onto the other platforms, so it's the same avatar and potentially even the same character name on all the brands, because that would
Did
be
they the avatar
so
on the?
huge.
Did they introduce the avatar on Valkyrie? I don't remember.
They tested porting avatar resources from Eve into the Unreal engine in Valkyrie, and they had it working pretty well. So it is possible. It's just, if they did that, it would just be so hilarious, because the whole thing of having your character being able to meet your competitor in another game is just, I can just see the whole drama of running around chasing mittens and
I can see the hilariousness of like someone docking and then someone killing them and taking their full slave set while they're on from a fucking Legion player. or
looting
something.
your slaves. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I just want to point out that you would be very proud of me, Caleb, because I've been flexing on people in chat about reading the financial statements of CCP, the company.
You actually read them.
Yeah, of course I did.
Nice.
Why wouldn't I?
Nice.
The information's out there.
Of course.
I was surprised how much money they made from Valkyrie.
Dude, it was like 33% of their
Was
revenue last
was not
year.
expecting that, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. It's because they managed to sell a copy for every fucking version of the Rift. Like, that's a huge amount of money. The Rift was very, very popular this year, and beyond that, the microtransactions are really good. Like, the economy they've got there is amazing.
Yeah, they're not doing bad when it comes to finances. I'm mostly curious about the shifting in shares positions, but that's just my little pet peeve to figure out who is actually going in and who is going out of a company. That says a lot about what might be
That's
happening
your
in the future.
layers of like, you're on such a different layer to me. It's like normal people are like, I don't know, I guess CCP makes money. I'm like, I know exactly how much money they're making and where. And you're like, I know who's making the money from where CCP is making the money off of you chumps. You're like,
It's so funny when you always do this playing dumb. You were the one talking about doing the whole interconnectivity stuff of social capital in EVE Online. That's exactly the same thing, just in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, I mean, I'm curious to see, for me, just as a regular, Joe player, accurate subscription information. How many people are actually in this dang game? 'Cause, I don't think we're in that place anymore where we can relate profitability to subscription numbers because we don't really run in that model anymore. So I mean, I don't know. That's it's got to do with game longevity as well, right?
I was gonna say, if you can
argue about game longevity at this point when EVE Online's fucking managed to live for nearly 15 goddamn years.
This is true.
It's a dinosaur.
Yeah, and yet through its lifetime, people will still go, "What's EVE?"
I think that's the problem, right? The marketing. I don't, and a lot of CSM members have been screaming about it.
We're getting to the point now where we're getting new generations playing the game, and it's gonna be like, we all joke about the bitter vets. It's like, no, legit, we're gonna have fucking bitter vets. Like back in my day, 2 decades ago.
Yeah, EVE's gonna be like the new RuneScape at that point.
When
we
this
had
game
snow
launched,
in the game. I had to fucking mine uphill both ways.
except the game's actually getting easier. Well,
yeah.
The game's getting slightly easier, but also in some ways harder. Like there's less bullshit things you can do now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There should be some of those
Back in my
homesteads.
days.
We need those homesteads for the elderly in EVE, so they can sit on their porch and just bitch at things.
Skid Vosh into PL?
I was fucking 7 when this game launched. Eat shit.
That's crazy!
That is ridiculous. Oh my god.
I don't know, like if I were joining the game today, I don't think I would actually be able to stick around the way I have, when I compared to when I started. I don't think the draw is going to be there if I started today. But I think that's just more of like the way the social stuff happens in EVE now, because it feels like it's just it all becomes a matter of do you have strong friends or not, and if you don't, you're gonna get punked. But that seems to be there the whole time.
Although a lot of people think that the game is too easy now, and it should go back to the days when it's like you accidentally hit that F1 key on the wrong target, and Concord comes and skull fucks you. No warning, you're just dead.
I mean, but that's more of a design problem, though, isn't it? Because it's difficult to understand the game, and it does a poor job communicating things to you.
Ever in EVE. I was getting attacked, and I started doing the smart bomb thing, and there was a billboard just behind me.
Done, son. Done.
And I just went, boom! And I was there. It's like, what happened? And I saw the billboard, and yeah, that's why.
That's a really interesting point there from Okalu, who says that at the risk of sounding like an old fart, the new generation is not going to embrace EVE in its current iteration. And I think that's kind of a false statement to make, purely because EVE has never appealed to any generation. EVE doesn't appeal to anyone. It's not a mass-marketed product. It's never claimed to be. You might think that maybe the bell curve is shifting away from EVE, but you're still going to have that tail end. You're still going to have people interested in EVE.
I was gonna say, and the other thing too is that a lot of people. All right, so one of the things with the whole alpha and omega, and the free-to-play is it's like. There was a lot of people that didn't like that because they felt that people weren't going to embrace it. But as I've tried to explain to people, it was kind of a no-brainer that they had to do, just because of the fact that you're saying like the new generation isn't going to accept it, but they already have. I mean, we can look at the numbers of new people who have created accounts since the Ascension release, and they are accepting it. Now, are they accepting it in masses? Like, are we all getting on the whole Call of Duty train? No. But I mean, if you look at the amount of new accounts being created before and after Ascension, it's drastically different.
It's worth noting, though, that actually by tracking some of the average age of those accounts, which you can do if you know spooky magic, you can start figuring that actually it's a lot more. It's not younger people who are joining as a result of this free-to-play thing. It's actually just people who are discovering EVE. 30-something-year-olds. my gran is gonna play Eve Online at some point. And
That's so cool, man.
That's gonna be the best advert.
That's so cool.
When you do that video and show you and her playing the NPE, that's going to be the best marketing thing that CCP has ever got, and I hope that they throw a lot of plays at it.
My grandma remembers World War II.
Exactly.
Wow.
I have a. Oh my gosh, what was the name that they had for her? Grantan or something?
Jin'taan.
Yeah.
Jin'taan. I like Grantan better, but
She's actually been reading through the Empires of Eve book. She absolutely loves it.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Yeah, no, she's great. It's like I love how we just bonded over going to Iceland together.
Is she coming to Amsterdam too?
I'll ask, but I don't. She's already been to Amsterdam a couple of times, and she doesn't really want to go back. Not into it.
Anyways, we should round up. We have about 1 minute left until we reach the 90-minute mark. So,
you don't want to talk about OAPs in Amsterdam? Not a seafood topic?
We should not talk about our plans about Amsterdam just yet. We should let the footage seep out into the general population of Eve so they can laugh at it after the fact.
That's nuts, man.
Ron, you want to close us up?
Alrighty, yeah. I just want to shout out to my dudes in Wrecking Machine. Haven't been able to join much of the fleets this week, guys, but you know, yay us, we're destroying citadels and empire. Keeping the prices of P4s rising. Love it. And props to my guys in our Discord for our investment stuff. We have a new operation that kicked off last week, and one of our guys is now a proud owner of a super carrier for ranting purposes out in Nullsec somewhere.
nice.
I give it 3 months until it gets wrecked.
I know, right? I know. Well, our investment's good for like a month, so we're good.
Sullen, where are you going to be going now that you're going to get defrocked, and who are you going to get some shoutouts to?
What do you mean? Because I'm no longer. Who am I gonna give shoutouts to because of the fact I'm no longer CSM? Is that what you're asking?
You're saying that you're never going to be on any more podcasts because you're no longer relevant. Get fucked.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a shout out to Bastion because we're not a Renter Alliance. We're still alive and kicking it. Actually, we're still growing and recruiting.
And going into the AT.
Yeah, and going into the AT. Bastion in the AT for the first time ever. That is impressive. I was actually kind of excited when I saw that. So good luck to those guys, and you know, I'll be watching, hopefully announcing.
Speaking of that, I want to give a shout out to my executor who made sure that CBA for the first time ever won't be in the Alliance tournament this year.
I'm so sorry, dude. I'm so sorry.
Alright.
That deserves a story time.
Shout out to him for generally being a good executor beyond occasional mistakes. And shout out to everyone we've been fighting down in Providence, you know. Everyone, Test, FCon, Brave, Waffles, Hordes, PL, NC Dot. Good dudes, keep coming, it's fun.
You're going to keep winning.
I haven't really started winning. They've not taken a fight they've lost yet, so you kind of have to win by default when it comes to fighting PL, unfortunately.
I guess that's what you get for trying to fight in Providence.
Yep. It's been fun. We've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm happy to have learned them.
Yeah, I will just be rolling out my Eve Guardian project, and hopefully they will start getting some original articles written there as soon as we can start getting the staff fixed. And until then, I am looking forward to a marvelous AT experience this year. So that's big on my schedule.
Awesome, great. So I guess we'll be closing it up here. Thanks, guys, for joining us, and we'll be back again next week. This is this is our new time slot right now, so I think it works a lot better, especially for our EU dudes. Just to catch it an hour earlier versus our previous time slot. So
yeah, great. We're done early enough. I can go get my drink on still.
Right? It's crazy. I'm gonna give me some Tito's, man, and finish watching TIS. All right, well, thank you very much, guys, and we'll do this again next week.
Take care.
Later, dudes.
Thanks again.
Fly smart.
Yep.